Welcome back to the Amped Up to 11 podcast, where we don't just talk about limb loss, we talk about the comeback. Today's guest, Darren Richardson. He knows what it means to lose something twice and still refuse to shrink. At 13, a boulder crushed his right foot, and doctors told him his passions, like climbing and ski racing, were basically over. He rebuilt anyway, went on to serve nearly 2 decades as a firefighter and paramedic, and then the invisible wounds caught up with him. PTSD pulled him into darkness, and just as he found his way back, his body demanded another amputation. Now, Darren is using everything he's lived through to coach first responders, veterans, and amputees. This is a conversation about grit, recovery, and the moment you decide you're not done yet. This is the Amped Up to 11 podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Amped Up to 11 podcast. This is Rick Bonkowski, and we are lucky enough to have Darren Richardson with us today. Darren, how are you, my man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's quite an honor.
Thank you for reaching out and being so generous in offering your story, which is, it's something, man. So when you sent me an email, I thought, oh man, yeah, this is something. I mean, this is a real story to behold, in that you went through a childhood trauma. You've been through 2 separate amputations. Have visited the dark doors of PTSD. And through it all, you're here today, and you are, coaching others and doing the good work, as we say. I was blown away by what you've been through, and certainly your willingness, to share, because I feel like so much of this process, in terms of healing, in terms of recalibrating our lives, embracing our situations, and thriving, has to do with our vulnerability and our willingness to share those things and expose ourselves in some way. So, kudos. And, I think where I want to start, because it really jumps off the page, is, what you went through, with your boulder accident. And, we as children, we all, mess around, and we're active, and we're doing all kinds of cool stuff, running and jumping and climbing and all those things. Can you recall and walk me through what were the circumstances of that particular accident, and moreover, what, not only what you think you remember about that, what you were going through, but also as an adult now, sort of how you view that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for that intro. And then, kind of a crazy story. So I'll start with, I was 13 years old. It was in 1993. And I was up at a lake with a friend and their family, and there were several other families there. We decided just hike around the lake, and be boys, right? So we veered off trail. We went up this gully boulder field area. At the time, we were both very into rock climbing. Grew up kind of in alternative sports, right? Skiing, rock climbing, stuff like that, which was considered alternative then. And so, yeah, like you said, boys will be boys. We scurried up this steep embankment, trying to hit some cliffs that we could just play on, right?
Yeah.
And as we were going up, I ended up on this little ledge area. And as I reached up, basically a big slab, a boulder that my friend described later, the size of a Volkswagen Bug, right, came down on me. And luckily enough, I was able to hear it moving and see it and move out of the way enough before it got me, but it did. It fell onto my foot, onto my right foot. Um, and then instantly pain, shock, all that stuff kind of takes over. As a 13-year-old kid, you don't really know. You can't process what just happened.
Did it roll over your foot or did it land on your
Yeah.
foot?
So I was lucky enough it rolled over my foot.
Okay.
So I wasn't trapped. And there were a lot of pieces of luck that happened that day. The grade of the hill was so steep that it just continued rolling. So no, I wasn't trapped. But then I immediately kind of looked down and saw the aftermath. I was wearing water shoes at the time, like the first iteration of water shoes, because we were
Oh,
out
wow.
playing at a lake, right? So no support, no. I mean, this rock was so big it would have destroyed a tennis shoe, a hiking boot. They even said if I was wearing steel-toed boots, it might have been crushed in it, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down at that point. My friend had heard this rock fall. He was kind of in another area and ran over. And immediately saw the look on his face, and he just, I remember his words exactly, and then he just, "Oh my God," is what he said, and he just took off running to get help. This was in a small town area, so we were about 20-25 minutes from the town. This is before cell phones. You know, it took a long time to even get help, so he had to run down back to the family group on the other side of the lake. They had to get in the car. They had to go drive to another lake where there happened to be a little marina with a telephone and call 911 and do that process, right? So
Yeah.
At that point, again, lucky enough, as he made it to the trail, he came across a husband and wife. And so told them what happened, and the husband came up and scurried up and tried to help. At this point, I was losing a lot of blood. I had sat down, I pulled the shoe off, or what was left of the shoe, to kind of see what am I dealing with, right? A 13-year-old kid, I don't know what I'm dealing with.
Wow.
And saw the aftermath of it was completely crushed, compound fractures everywhere, and thought, I don't know if this can be fixed.
Well, I would think at
Right?
13, I would think at 13 too, you're sort of like, what am I looking at right now? Like what
Yeah,
what have I
exactly.
done what have I done to myself? Because
Right.
we're not fluent like medically when we're 13.
No, not
And
at
you're
all.
just looking at probably like a bloodied pancake, basically. Like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, what
There
used to be a
was
foot is just smushed and
smashed. There's
smashed,
no
and I'm bleeding.
recollection of a foot. Yeah. I saw, there were bones, there were tendons. I didn't know what was what. And so I just sat down and realized I'm losing a ton of blood. And I remember thinking, I need to stop bleeding. Growing up in a small town, you learn how, like, simple first aid stuff, right? I started taking my shirt off to tie it around my leg, thinking this is all I have to stop this bleeding. And at that time,
See, but
this
even
other
that's
guy,
like genius. Like even that
right
there. I'll be
Yeah,
honest, Darren.
I thought so.
I wouldn't have thought of that. I just would have been screaming like, help.
Yeah.
Help!
I was
Pretty smart.
just shocked, right?
Yeah.
I sat down and that's what I did. And the gentleman, the guy that came up to help, luckily he was a dentist. And so had some medical training, took his belt off, tied it around my leg, and there's my tourniquet, right?
Yeah.
And he sat with me until the paramedics showed up, which was, pretty cool, right? And although
Again,
nothing we could do, but
like you said, again, luck.
Pure luck. And so again, it takes a while. This is a tiny town. This is a volunteer fire department. Getting help took forever, right? And I don't remember much other than waiting until one of the paramedics came rushing up, and then they started treating me while the rest of the fire crews. They actually had to call search and rescue out because now they needed to rescue me out of this area with ropes and a rope system, a litter system.
Wow.
And so the whole rescue took a little over 4 hours to get me off the mountain into an ambulance down to the hospital, which was 20 minutes away or so, 25 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so that process was just painstaking. I remember being in a lot of pain, but then actually, like, I feel like my leg went numb at some point,
Yeah.
and it really wasn't bad, you know. And then once the paramedic got there and kind of gave me some pain meds, I knew I was going to be okay after that.
So I'm
So yeah, the rush.
assuming get you to the hospital, and then it's a exercise in limb salvage, correct?
Yes, it was. It was initially they told my parents. So my parents were there. They held them, obviously held them back. They were at the kind of the staging area. I was able to see them as they're wheeling me through into the ambulance, and then actually they were with my dog, and my dog jumped in the ambulance and was not letting anyone take me. Right,
That's
which
awesome.
was kind of funny part of the story.
Yeah.
But when I arrived at the hospital, it was initially they were going to take my leg below the knee. Again, another just piece of pure luck was their tiny hospital. There's no surgeon on staff. Lucky enough, there was an orthopedic surgeon who happened to do occasional cases at that hospital, who lived in San Diego and flew in for a special case that day.
Happened to be there.
So happened to be there. He's a trauma surgeon. He was an orthopedic surgeon. And he stepped in and luck have it, do the surgery. Originally they were going to try to fly me out. But I lived near Yosemite National Park.
Okay.
In the mountains of California. This is where this happened. The only helicopter in the region was doing a rescue in Yosemite at that time, so that was unavailable. So they couldn't even fly me to another trauma center in a reasonable amount of time. So they did the surgery. Initially, he just wanted to see what they could do in limb salvage, and lucky enough, he chose to try to piece it back together, clean everything out, and pinned my foot back together as best he could.
Yeah.
Just to wait. We knew there was going to be a lot of surgeries, so luckily they didn't take my leg that afternoon.
And at what point in the surgical process did they decide to take a few toes?
Yeah, so it was 2 weeks into my hospital stay. So I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, deciding, and about 2 weeks in, they realized there was not enough blood flow was not happening to a couple toes. We needed to kind of figure out. I had no skin on the top of the foot, so they chose to do tons of skin grafting.
Yeah.
And so that was a 2-week process before they realized a lot of the foot is coming back, but not enough. So, I got that news while wheeling my wheelchair around in my so-called physical therapy later, that I saw the doc and he said, "Hey, don't eat anything for lunch. We're going in and taking those toes off tonight."
Yeah.
And again, as a 13-year-old kid, I didn't know quite what that meant, but I was excited to hear the word toes and not leg. So that's what we did.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So you're 13, you've been through this trauma, right? And all these unknowns, and there's all of this sort of adult chatter going on around you. At that point, did you even know what an amputee was?
I did, but not enough, right?
Yeah.
At that point, you see people without limbs. I lived in a small town, which was, it's rare. The weird, ironic part of this whole story, the friend I was with, his father was above the knee amputee.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's
so I knew what it was. He had lost his leg, I believe, from, they said he just had an illness, and that's all I took it as. So I assume it was probably a septic issue. Again, I don't really know.
It could have been diabetes, could have been
That
sepsis, it could have been a lot of things.
Sure, exactly. But he, as a young man, lost his leg above the knee,
Yeah,
and so he had, and it was more of an older kind of prosthetic, so it was very noticeable,
sure.
um, even with his walk. But that's all the extent I knew. So, like, I can't imagine the trauma that my friend went through, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But at that age, at least
yeah.
knowing that that's a thing,
Yes.
um, it I would think not necessarily create a familiarity about it, but at least knowing, okay, I know what that word means. I know that that's a
Yeah.
possibility. I certainly don't want to lose my leg. And knowing, even at 13, because I mean, you have rational thought. We're
Sure.
critical thinkers at 13, knowing, okay, a couple of toes, I can do this. And based on your story and what I know about you, you came roaring back. I mean, you recovered and you became very, very active. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, very high functioning. It wasn't as if losing those toes, which, let's remember, technically you're an amputee in that situation.
Sure.
Um, and sometimes people, I had a previous guest before you. We were talking about this comparison thing that goes on. Like,
Hmm.
your amputation isn't so bad and mine's worse and his is better and this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. I don't care what
Right.
you've lost, to what degree or how far up the limb, it affects everyone differently. So I'm kind of pounding away on this theme of it's all based on the individual and whether or not someone like yourself, who consequently, because you became so active, developed more complications down the road, ended up losing half of your foot, um, because of those issues. There is nothing that would suggest that you are necessarily going to do way better than someone like myself, who is a below the knee amputee, right? Because
Right.
there's no, there are predictable outcomes, but they large in part depend on a whole list of factors, whether that's support system, access to care, fitness level, grit.
Right.
How bad do I want it? Because I will echo this again. I know just as many below knee amputees that are super active as above knee, and I know just as many above knee that are homebound as below knee, meaning they're struggling. They're in a strugglesome space and they can't, adapt to their world. They're still in process. Um, so obviously, I would think getting active again after having the Boulder accident was probably pretty empowering for you, in that, I'm getting back to life and I'm going to do all the things that I want to do. And the curiosity I have, losing the toes, were you more in like a orthopedic device? Like, what did that look like for you in terms of every day, what shoes you're wearing, like how you're getting around?
Right. Right. Yeah. So I want to back up a little, but yes, that totally ties into it. Yeah. I was told so many things by so many professionals. Um, I was told you'll never walk without a limp again. You will
Yeah.
never rock climb again. I was uh, I was an avid ski racer, big skier, and they said you're not skiing for the next year or two. You'll probably never race again. And so I kept hearing this, and I didn't like that answer,
You're
right?
done.
Because yeah, you're done, and I'm 13. And no, you don't know me. Um, I can do this. I truly believed, and at this point, yes, I was an amputee. I truly believe I wasn't, and I
Mm,
think that, um, not to sound demeaning in any way or cynical or any way, I developed as well, you're given 10 fingers and 10 toes. You're allowed to lose a couple. And
Yeah, I
that's
got
kind of
extra.
like, honestly, I have extras. And so I went through my life kind of with that attitude. And I
Yeah.
feel like it served me, right? And not to be offensive to anybody at all, but I told myself I wasn't an amputee. And by doing that, you know, I think I kept myself out of the victim role
Yeah.
by saying that. You know, as a child, and this has been studied, when children are asked, you know, children with amputees, what are they scared of? A lot of it is acceptance, like, right, of my friends.
Yeah.
When you ask an adult, it's different, right? It's, oh, how am I going to get through this? So now, you know, I'm disabled and all that. I never liked those words, and I think that helped my drive. So, you know, when we were asked, oh, we'll get you your parents a placard for your car, and you can park in the handicap spot for a while and all that. And I said, no, I want to be normal.
Yeah.
And so leading into your question is like, what type of device or did I need? I didn't need anything.
Wow.
Back then, my surgeon said they don't make prosthetic toes. You don't need one. I
So
went and
you didn't
got
require like an insert or anything, something to fill the gap or whatever.
no, I had custom footbeds made, and actually, I didn't even go to a prosthetist. I went to a ski shop,
Mm-hmm.
and there are insoles that kind of mold super feet was the brand I used, and anybody can get them. They're for just athletics.
Yeah.
They said I could get something and do a shoe filler, but it was actually so painful against the remaining toes I had. So I
Yeah.
lost the first two toes, the big toe and the second toe.
Okay.
Um, and that little wedge that created pushed against really painful spots. So I never had one. I just chose not to go without. My foot didn't really slide in the shoe that much. I would just tie it tighter. And so that's how I went through life up until very recently. Um, I never needed support. Due to the injury, I had lost the main arch in my foot, so I needed some arch support, and that it was just kind of custom footbeds there for many years until I just decided to just wear tennis shoes as is
I
and
think you,
train my body.
yeah, I think you make a good point though about, kids and young amputees. And, because I talk to so
Yeah,
many parents of young amputees. And I always say, the ironic part is young amputees worry about the very, very simple same things that just normal kids worry about. Like you
right.
mentioned, I just want to be accepted. I just want to get picked when we're playing outside. I just want friends. I just want, to belong, to the gang, to the club. Whereas
Exactly.
you're right, so much of that adult experience, it's very different because there's this A-B comparison of this is what I once was, this is what I am now. How do I connect that? And very
Right.
often I'll say, well, so much of that connective tissue is kind of letting go of that version of yourself and becoming this new version of yourself. Because if everything is built on what I was, well, how do I move forward? I can't go back to that. And if I do feel passion for something and want to do something, and it's really at some point, it is on some level a rejection of I'm not, I'm just not going to let that stop me. This is who I am
Mhm.
now, and this is just the new me, and this is how I do things. And in some ways, it's sort of a refusal of acknowledging that, right? Where you say,
Right.
I don't need that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I had a placard for a little while before I was
Mhm.
actually in a prosthesis, and I would get out of my car and on one leg, hop to the trunk, pull my wheelchair out of the trunk, stage it right there in the parking lot. And I'll say, people are kind. They come over, excuse me, you need some help?
Right, right.
When they see you on one leg, like boing, 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 they're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, like I think he needs help. And I was similar in that no, I'm good. But thank you.
Mhm.
Very nice of you.
Yes.
But I'm good. Yeah. I do this every day. And it was for a period a fake it till you make it. But
Mhm.
I did in a lot of ways sort of reject the idea that I had to be a victim, and I needed this constant care, or I'd become fragile in some way. But I know all of those issues are very different, for different people. How long ago was this recent amputation? When did that happen?
Yeah. So the most recent amputation was less than a year ago. It
Yeah.
was last March. Um, and because, this was basically an elective amputation. I had worn out my foot. Um, the previous one obviously was not. So I experienced kind of two different aspects of looking at an amputation, right? Um, I had worn my foot out. I was having more and more pain in the remaining toes.
Yeah.
Uh, I went and saw a surgeon, and I was told years ago when this first happened, 32 years ago, eventually I will have to have the remaining toes taken off just from pain, arthritis, scar tissue. And so I was okay with that.
Yeah.
I had had an amazing life up to this, right?
Amazing
Uh,
run.
amazing, literally amazing run. Yes. Um, I, right after that first injury, when I was told I'd never climb again, I was climbing in October. 3 months after that initial crush injury and amputation, I went rock climbing. I was ski racing that December, which I was told I'd never do. Right. The child mindset, I just dwelled on it.
Yeah.
Of and I adapted to where I used my heel to climb. I
Yep.
actually spun my foot as far around as my heel didn't hurt. Why
Yeah.
can't I use it? It was that logic that I had of, you can't tell me what to do. I can do this anyway. My parents, my mom was very supportive in this. My parents were divorced. There's a whole other story on that with some childhood generational trauma, alcoholism, that whole world that I'll dive into. But
Yeah. We're going to talk
that
about that.
didn't, yeah, but that didn't, um, that stuff didn't stop me. And so I went through my life. I became a firefighter, a paramedic, lived this wonderful life, grew my own family. I was actually training to get back in the fire service
Yeah.
when I started wearing my foot out again.
So the thing I want to ask you, in relation to how when you say, I wore out my foot, things of that nature, given that you're active and you had a very, very long run after the accident, after this amputation of the toes. And sometimes I tend to wonder, I get in this curious space of going that long, right? As an active person, was being active, could that have possibly played a role in how long you were able to go? Conversely, had you not been active, had you not been someone that was working your body, developing all your other muscles, doing all of those things in terms of adaptation, that maybe there would have been complications sooner, possibly? Or do you feel like, no, I beat it into the dirt, and the inevitability factor was just too great for me? Sort of like I knew it was coming, but it was really just a question of, okay, when is the sole of my shoe finally going to wear out and fall off, right?
Right. Yeah, I've thought that too. And I feel like it was inevitable anyway. right? They had told me you're going to need surgery every 10 years to figure this out. You can have cosmetic surgery if you don't like the way it looks, but this is a long road
Yeah.
for the rest of your life, is what I understood.
Right.
And me kind of being me of, well, I'm going to live my life to the fullest. I experienced, near death in a way, right?
Sure.
I don't want to sit anymore, right?
You
I'm an
could have
active
died up
person.
on that mountain, man. You could have
Exactly.
died on that hill. That boulder could have just completely taken you out. Like done.
Absolutely. If it hit anywhere else, I would be dead.
Things
This was
would have went black
very quickly,
and you would have been a
and end of
memory.
story.
Yeah.
Right. And so growing up, I've always kind of been um, more of a fighter, I would say, not in the literal sense, just having that drive, right? Um, my favorite movie was Rocky growing up, right? So it's just this get up and get moving again and
Yeah.
keep going. And it's funny because I tell myself that even when I'm working out, a hard workout, a bad day, whatever it is, my words to myself, get up,
Yeah.
you can do this. And so that's how I've always lived my life. Um, if I wasn't active, I wouldn't have gotten, if I said, this is it, I would have never become a firefighter. I would have never truly experienced what I enjoy. And I would, like I said, I've always been active in rock climbing and ski racing, um, and I just literally, that was my passion during my first injury, was how fast can I get to climbing again?
Yeah.
And I did in 3 months, back climbing again.
Yeah.
Which the doctor was shocked. The physical therapists were shocked, but very proud. Like, you could see all these things that we told this kid no, he did.
I think there's
And
such a
that's,
satisfaction though in like showing people,
in a
you
way,
know,
there is. And
like
it's not in a mean way, but you told me
no,
no, and I
no.
can do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's certainly an empowerment piece. There's certainly a
Oh,
satisfaction in
sure.
saying, "Don't ever tell me I'm not going to do that because I'll do it."
Yes. Because exactly. And
Yeah,
I've lived my life nonstop that way. I've been told I can't do a lot of things a lot of times. And
yeah,
every single time I come out ahead. And so I press that. You can't, although there's statistics and there's professionals and there's experts, there's no test ever, and there ever will be, on the human spirit,
yeah,
the drive. You can test everything else, but you can't test the heart in that capacity, right? Um, and so, kind of, my mission is to prove that. Uh, and so, with the second amputation, it was, yeah, I've been working hard. I get that I most likely wore it out a little faster. However, I think if I did nothing, I could have truly, I wouldn't be in very good shape, and I could have developed other disease processes. I
other
could have
issues.
other issues. And so I would rather choose, in a
Yeah,
way, to do it to myself
yeah,
through fitness and great memories and enjoyment, if I'm going to come to the same road anyway.
yeah. I want to talk about this current amputation. I want to talk about
Yeah.
this adaptive device that you're using, which is fascinating. But I want to circle back to what you have been very, very forthcoming about in terms of your PTSD and sort of your journey into some of those darker spaces of your life, and then obviously this comeback story, which is something I think is really, really critical to this particular episode. Um, so, because I've never personally experienced PTSD, I've definitely had my share of like little panic attacks. But can you describe for people that are either going through that or are not sure if they're going through that, what that spectrum of emotions was like in terms of first how the warning signs showed up and what were the clues that sort of kind of came forward into your mind, into your life, into your, your everyday, and sort of what that particular journey through the dark forest was like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I experienced PTSD, and it came, in a little different way. So for me, and right after my initial injury, I was having trouble sleeping at 13 years old. They did diagnose me with PTSD. They brought a therapist in, and I just did talk therapy a few times, and then they said I was good and I was done. And I truly believed that. I I went to become a firefighter. I could easily talk about my foot injury. I could laugh, I could joke. I really felt I was over it. Um, then I was actually having issues later in life again, and I'll go back to the firefighting. There's everyone sees it as, oh, you're a hero. It's a great job, and it is so rewarding, and I loved it. But there's a dark side, um, to emergency services, first responders, police, fire, with military, right? You see things that are horrific on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Um, you relate it to yourself some way, but you're also told you have a job to do. You need to suck it up and bottle it up and get your job done, right? I can't be panicking in the middle of a fire scene, right? Or a bad car accident, right? I have to be professional. And so you bottle it up. You're also in a male dominated career where, it's a macho bravado kind of world. It's getting
Sure.
much better. It is. But when I first started in 2003 as a firefighter, you were told to suck it up, kid. This is the job. And you learn that way, and you're around it, and you hold it in. Well, that always comes out at some point. And for me, I went decades just having bad calls and sucking it up. And my wife was an ER nurse at the time,
Oh,
and
wow. Both of you.
both of us. And so we would share stories, and then we stopped sharing stories, but we would bring work home, right? Internally. Um, we stopped talking about that stuff. And I honestly thought, I don't want to burden her with the stuff I saw, right? I would drive up in the park in the driveway after a horrific call and say, how do I go home and be husband and dad to a baby after, 2 hours ago, I just saw this that happened to a child,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, it's rough. So that started creeping in, and I bottled it up, and I had actually ended up leaving the fire service. My wife got a great job offer. We were in the Denver area. Um, and although I'll say there were resources available, there weren't enough. And it's unfortunately a culture with police, fire, military. You don't talk about that stuff. If you show weakness, they're going to send you out. You're going to lose your job, right? You're crazy. So you hide it. I hid mine. I would joke a lot on the outside, but I started drinking, to calm
Yeah.
those scenes, those voices, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'll move. I was burnt out of being a paramedic. There's only so much you can do. Although I love the fire service, I thought I need a reset. So we moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My wife got a great job out here, and I became a handyman and started doing kind of construction work, thinking it'll get better. I can handle it.
Yeah. New environment.
New environment, different change of pace. I don't have to be up all night on crazy 911 calls. And I dealt with it for a while, but then the loneliness hits and the drinking continued,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't showing up as a good father, a good husband. And then realized it one day. I would still get emails from like fire service stuff, and there was a PTSD article I read, and I had seen PTSD in soldiers. I had seen it in people, and I never looked in the mirror because I was in denial. And so after this article, there was like a little quiz, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll just take it. What could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
I hit red flags on every single question, and that was my eye opener.
Yeah.
I would get home from work at the same time and I was numb. I'd stare at a wall eating dinner. I wasn't paying attention to my kids' stories. I was there, but I wasn't present, right? And truly miserable. And so trouble sleeping for well over a decade. All these things slowly added up. Um, you get in your head and think, oh, it's the place I moved. It's this, it's that. When I finally opened my eyes and looked in the mirror, the problem was me, but I had an injury. And so it took me a while because I'm a fireman and I can fix stuff. So I started looking for podcasts to listen to
Yeah.
and see maybe I can get some help there. And I found one that was great, but he kept referring, the podcast I had listened to said, if you're feeling you need therapy, find a therapist. Find a therapist that's trained in PTSD. And so I did. I reached out. And truly the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was never going into a burning building. It was never going to these crazy fire scenes or even telling a parent their child is deceased.
Yeah.
It was harder for me to walk into a therapist office and ask for help.
Yeah.
And so, but at that point, my eyes opened, and going through therapy, I did what's called EMDR, which is just a therapy technique, uh, which really helped me. And so I did it several times with a therapist who worked with first responders. I sought out who I felt would be the best for me.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
And not just any therapist, but one who specializes in first responders. And so I saw her for a while and things started clearing up. And the thing about the EMDR treatments is they'll open up more doors. And so I had finished therapy and thought I was doing good. And a month later, I called her back up and said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to leave yet. And so we looked into my foot injury, and that opened up Pandora's box. That opened up so much to where I stayed in therapy and did EMDR training on my foot, which opened up to my childhood with generational trauma, with alcoholism. Like everything.
Funny
And
how it's
so
all connected, isn't it?
it is all connected. Yes. And since then, like I am vocally an advocate for mental health and the first responder, veteran, and amputee world. It hits so many people, and we all, it's truly a silent killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do think that a lot of people experience it. And it's, it's just, the help is out there more now. And it's being talked about more, which I think is incredible.
Well, and I know you're developing a platform specifically, for people in that situation, and to take your own story, your own experience, your own trauma, and self-realize and say, okay, we know this exists. Many people are not diagnosed. So many are still in that bottle up phase. I haven't really faced, this pain.
Mm-hmm.
We're complex individuals. Humans are interesting, right? Because there's so many layers to what creates, Darren. There's so many layers to what creates Rick, and it's all completely unique. No two are alike, even identical twins. There is so much outside stimulus. There is so many different factors that go into this recipe of the bake, and cake that we become.
Yes.
That when we start to parse it out, which therapy does a great job of doing,
Mm-hmm.
that's when we can step outside of the bubble, develop a lens for it, and know how to examine it and say, this is why I'm feeling that way. Oh, wait a minute. This is why I reacted that way. It came from
Yes.
this. It was connected to that. Oh, it was exacerbated by this. And once we can, really understand ourselves and start to master a little bit what the buttons are, then we can really start to love ourselves and give ourselves grace and say, it's okay, because I know why this is happening. I know I am filled with emotion right now. I know I am filled with fear right now. I know why I can't stop crying every time something hits me the wrong way. And so much of that is critical, especially in the jobs that you're describing. When you talk about, first responders, emergency services, veterans, which I've interviewed, and still speak to, everyone is at a different point in the timeline in terms of that mastery of their situation and understanding it. So I admire how you've come out on the other end of that. I want you to talk a little bit more about how some of this has transitioned, into, Ashes to Ascent and some of the coaching that you're doing now and developing these tools, these resources. Speak to the audience in a way that would give them some insight as to the benefits of those types of teachings.
Yeah. Yeah. So it came out of my second amputation. I realized, because I was training to get back in the fire service and I was ready for it, but I realized my story needs to be heard. And I can give back more to those in need who have struggled similar, right? I feel like I am an example. I've created this. To I want to give back in the form of coaching. So really, the therapy is excellent and is needed, greatly needed for a lot of people. But therapy is for the recovery process, where coaching is, it can assist that into a discovery process. What I mean by that is you find who you are. And from there, when you find who you are, you can rise up again. And so I created my coaching business called Ashes to Ascent Coaching, literally because I was at my rock bottom, right? Um, and I had realized that I came out of, you know, childhood injuries, childhood traumas, um, and rose up to the top of everything I ever wanted to be, and then get knocked back down again into PTSD, and to rise up out of that to get knocked down again with a second amputation. That's why I created Ashes to Ascent Coaching. So what I do is coach individuals who want to overcome challenges.
Yeah.
I walk alongside them, and I think that's important. Uh, those individuals, especially first responders, veterans, and amputees. Again, I have that lived experience, that firsthand experience that a lot of people are looking for. Just like when I was looking for a therapist who understood first responders, because it's different. Someone who experiences PTSD from, let's say, a car accident, or a traumatic event, and like that's a real thing. That's horrific. In first responders and veterans, it's a little different because you're exposed to hundreds or thousands of experiences, right? They say the average person will experience anywhere from 1 to 4, 1 to 3, 1 to 4 traumatic events in their life. A first responder sees between 600 and 800 in their career.
I think that's such a good point. I want to pause on that only because
Yeah.
I never looked at it that way until you just said it. Because I talk to so many people that are trauma survivors, and it has
Mm-hmm.
such an imprint on them. You get branded in a way, right?
You do,
So
yes.
so what you're saying is, when your career, when your daily 9 to 5, whatever it is, most of these people work under tremendous duress, all kinds of crazy
Mm-hmm.
hours. when every single day you are experiencing trauma, even if it's not on your person, you're still experiencing that trauma. You are
You are.
witnessing, you are engaging, you are enmeshed in that trauma that you are trying to navigate, whether that's saving a life, getting someone out of danger, whatever that is, which you're correct. Like, how many times have I ever personally really experienced trauma? I could probably count it on one hand.
Right.
Whereas you're talking about hundreds of experiences,
Hundreds, if not thousands. And
thousands.
and that takes a toll. So there's actually a term for that. It's complex PTSD.
Wow.
And so it, they look at it and say you don't necessarily have to experience it, although personal experience is a big deal, obviously. Um, but just being involved, right? There are emergency situations where firefighters have been hurt or killed, which is traumatic for their best friend next to them, right? The situations you go in are horrific. I've been involved in fires where people have been hurt. I've been car accidents. I've been involved in an active shooter where I was pinned down behind a vehicle with someone who was shot. And I'm worried about myself, but I'm taking
Yeah.
care of them.
Yeah.
So tons of traumatic experiences, right? Um, and so to kind of go back to coaching and having that um, lived experience, that is my mission now, is to help others understand. Again, I don't have the same trauma that you have. I don't know your experience, but I have some, and I can show you the ups and downs, and that's really what I want to do. um, with one-on-one coaching, with group coaching, with similar groups of people. So let's say a group of first responders or a group of amputees that all get it, because you're not alone in any of these, right? But we feel alone when we have that injury.
Yeah.
Um, and so bringing it up and helping those individuals rise up, right? Get out of that fire, get out of that dark place, um, and at the same time, navigate where your true limits are. Because, like I said earlier, that expert that says you'll never do this again, that's somebody else putting a limit on you. And
Yeah.
if you believe it, you're not, that's a dangerous spot to be, right?
Yeah. It's likely to stick
Um,
more when you start to
it's
believe it.
exactly. So to empower and help others, um, that is my whole purpose anymore. I have found my why. It's exactly that, to help anybody that needs to overcome these challenges. And so I want to take it a step further and go into the public speaking route and really bring awareness to mental health and how it applies with first responders, veterans, amputees, and how you don't have to be that victim, right?
Yeah.
It's very, it's too many of us have been in the past, and that story can change.
Sure. Well, what a great mission statement. And give me your details right now as far as reaching out to you. Are there any links? How do you prefer to do intake when people are seeking out, your coaching?
So currently, I'm on Instagram. I'm working on a website, um, or through email right now. So my Instagram account is ashes underscore ascent underscore coaching, ashes ascent coaching. And then email is Darren at ashes ascent, or I'm sorry, Darren at ashes2ascent.com is my email.
Got it.
Those are the ways you can get a hold of me. And yeah, for anyone wanting and seeking help, I do one-on-one sessions, virtual or in person. If you happen to be in the Coeur d'Alene, Spokane area, um, or yeah, uh, and the group coaching is obviously kind of the in-person route that I'm just getting started in. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like this is so needed in this world. And it's a community that I want to let people know you're not alone and you can come together. And there are groups, because I know there's tons of support groups. Whatever works for you as an individual is best, right?
Some
But
better than
sometimes we need
others.
that little kick, right? Yeah, we need a little encouraging, and so that's my hope and my
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah. No, it's such a amazing mission statement and such a great way to take everything that you've gone through, this full spectrum, and to just sort of land in this place of, okay, I found my why. This is where I'm going now. And I think it's wonderful and so exciting, to share with our audience. And I feel very fortunate. Oftentimes someone will say to me, did things, get better or worse for you, as an amputee? And it's a no brainer for me. It's like, oh gosh, so much better, so much more aware. I'm so much more present. I'm so much more engaged and creative, and wanting this type of connection and sort of drawing energy from that and letting that fuel other parts of my life. And I have the pleasure of meeting people like yourself. And, when someone says, well, what do you believe in? I'm like, I believe in people and their energy. And, I consider myself very lucky that, I have all these like really, really cool, amazing, inspiring people that I get to interact with. And so many of us, might go and see you speak, and that's certainly inspiring and it's great and you take things from it. And I think to myself, I get to do it all the time. Like all the time, right? There's all these
Yeah,
amazing, athletes, corporate people, coaches, practitioners, people in the tech space, people in the medical space, firefighters, emergency. It's amazing to me. So I feel very, very lucky. The last thing I want to talk about before I let you go,
sure.
tell me a little bit about the device that you're using right now. Because I did,
Yes.
I did look on Insta and saw, this. Is it technically called a prosthesis? What do they refer to it as?
Yeah. So it's referred to. It's called an AFO.
Okay.
It's an articulating foot orthotic, technically.
Wow.
Mine is modified.
Okay.
So when I spoke with my prosthetist, he had a couple different ideas. When you speak with them, they want to know how active you are. Well, I'm pretty active. I'm hard on stuff. I work out a lot. I do high intensity workouts. Um, I need something that's going to work,
Something
kind of
that's not
battle
going to
tested.
break.
Exactly. And so what he did for me is he took the idea of this AFO. It uh, basically he designed a cup that my foot sits in,
Do you
with a
have it?
strap.
Do you have it?
Yes,
Where is
yeah, I
it?
do. I can grab it real quick. Do you want me to?
Do you
It's just
mind?
upstairs.
Do you
Yeah, yeah.
mind?
We can just turn the camera on. Absolutely. Yeah, give me 2 seconds to grab it.
Yeah, go and grab it, and that way you can just do
Okay.
a show and tell.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll, I'll be in a second. So this is my AFO. My prosthetic specialist here, my prosthetist, designed a cup that my foot sits in.
Mm.
And then this has a carbon fiber plate on the bottom that allows for a spring, and another carbon fiber plate that attaches up to my calf so it can move. So now what this has created is basically lengthen the lever of my foot. So now I get that full extension to where I can run now. I can jump rope. I can do any kind of jumping, hiking that I want. That still gives me good, an assist where my toes or the front of my foot is no longer able to help. Right.
Sure.
So this then just slides into my workout shoe, and that's what I wear when I work out
Yeah.
or hike or anytime I need a little bit of support, so that my shoe doesn't fold literally in half.
Well, and obviously you're getting
Yeah.
around with half a foot because you just, ran upstairs and got it.
Yes. And so in my regular shoe, they've built me a custom footbed
Okay.
that's just raised in the front. And so I'll show you that. So this is my day-to-day orthotic at this point. But you can kind of see
Yep.
that basically a shoe filler just with some padding,
Makes
with
sense. Yep.
an arch kind of built in. So that's my day-to-day. And then when I need a little more assistance for working out, hiking, anything like that, that's when I use my my AFO. He calls it a prosthetic in a way. It's a hybrid, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. When you want to go turbo, when you want to go turbo,
Exactly.
you gotta go with the AFO.
Exactly. I just call it my strong foot and throw it on. My kids love it. And
My strong foot. I love that.
It's my strong foot. Yep. And that's what I use.
I love all the names that we come up for stuff. I was telling someone the other day.
Oh, right.
Whenever my granddaughter sees me with my leg off, she's like, "Grandpa, can you show me your baby leg?" I'm like, "My baby leg?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, your baby leg, your little leg. Okay, I guess that's what we're going to call it now.
Right.
It's not a stump. It's not a residual limb. It's a baby leg.
It's a baby leg. It's kids in their imagination. They're so honest.
I know. It's funny. Yeah, it's a really cool piece of hardware, and such a marvel to adaptation and giving you the ability to, again, go turbo, overachieve, do all the things that you want to do. And again, so happy that you have access and the ability to get these things and feel normal, be able to feel like there's nothing I can't do. If I want to go hard, this is what I use. And it's really just the tools, because for me, I've reached a point where, donning my prosthesis, it's like putting on a shoe. It's not the process, or feels like the process that it was, 7 years ago, when I thought, oh,
right.
no, now I got to do this, and now I got to do that, and there's all this, and is this clean, is that, and there's all that worry. And now, my girlfriend Sarah will be like, I don't think you realize how quickly you put that on now. It's just like zip, 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 boom, let's go. Whereas, getting up in the morning as a new amputee, it's like 15, 20 minutes of, okay, do I have this on right? Does it feel right? And so many of these things, as we embrace it, we're determined to adapt with it, they become easier over time. And it just becomes, that's just your jam, man. It's what you do. And this is how I get around. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think the visual is important, And
yes.
I'm going to let you close out the episode. I'm going to let you give anyone advice that is new to this experience, and they reach out to you and they say, Darren, a brand new amputee, what advice do you have for me?
Yeah, I would say, don't be a victim. Get your mindset where it needs to be. Don't let anybody put a limit on you. I think is the biggest take home, that you can still do whatever you want to do. Just have that drive, and don't listen to, if you have a doctor or somebody, a professional that says you'll never do this, challenge it a little bit. I just think that you're the only person that can put a limit on yourself, not somebody else. And again, the only thing in this world that can never be measured and quantified is the human spirit, the human drive. So the sky's truly the limit. Most people think they can't do something. They can. The human body will do it. You just have to set your mind to it.
Awesome.
And so Yeah.
Very, very wise words. Ashes to Ascent Coaching. Look it up, like it, share it. Darren Richardson, thank you so much for being here. I'm Rick Bonkowski. This is the Amped Up to 11 podcast, and we will see you next time. I want to wish everyone health and happiness.